Cover-based shooters really plagued the 7th generation of video games, but there's only one that really sticks out: Vanquish. It's made by Platinum Games, who usually make hack-and-slash action titles like Bayonetta or Metal Gear Revengeance. It's an action third-person shooter that looks like Uncharted or Gears of War, but has bullets and missiles honing in from all different directions, reminiscent of bullet hell shooters like Enter the Gungeon or Skyforce. Covers can be easily destroyed, often with a single shot, forcing the player to be on the move. But what makes it excellent is its rocket slide mechanic, which lets you slide around the level like an armed figure skater, closing the gap between you and the enemy. It also acts as a defensive escape to get some brief respite behind cover, opening up new gameplay possibilities that lets the player express themselves and increases the pace substantially for a cover-based shooter. So you're not waiting in cover to play whack-a-mole, but performing stylish gymnastics while shooting. That's an action that moves at a very different pace than your standard shooter. Sam can manually trigger his AR mode that slows down time, letting you shoot with more precision and deal more damage. But use it too much and your suit overheats, slowing down Sam's movement significantly. You can also trigger the AR mode with a dodge whilst aiming, or even when getting out of cover mid-air and while rocket sliding. This creates an interesting risk versus reward dynamic, as each situation puts the player in an extremely vulnerable position that is out of cover or low on energy. So you can't sit back and turn on your slow-mo with a button and rack up headshots, but you have to sacrifice your defense to use your offensive abilities. It not only gives the player more actions to play with than just point and shoot, but makes the action more involved that also lets you be as stylish as you can be. It lets most casual players have a good time with fun mechanics and gives the more hardcore players a skill ceiling to strive to. This lets player perform hard to pull off moves like boost sliding for a wee bit and dodging just at the right time to not consume any AR energy, and cover enough distance at the same time. You can also throw a grenade and shoot it mid-air whilst in AR mode to cause an area of effect damage. You can quickly switch between your weapons when one of them runs out of ammo and continue shooting with no pause or reload that also skips animations for heavier weapons like the rocket launcher. These mechanics aren't explicitly told to you, but they come with experience and mastery, like wall jumping in Super Metroid or sliding backwards in Apex Legends. You never acquire any of them as a new skill or ability, but they're just skills you've always had but didn't use. Having depth in games is not about button combos or move lists, but rather giving players enough movesets that are viable to read their opponent and know how to react and perform against them. Like your ability to combine two actions, say a boost slide and a kick, along with triggering your AR mode right after to effectively take down an opponent. These design choices and mechanics are antithetical to most cover-based shooters that often put you behind cover and never really let you do more than shoot, and well, maybe loot. Vanquish lets you get up on an enemy's base to feel more tactile with your AR mode and mobility. Hey, it even lets you finish off most bosses with quick time events like God of War, or even boost light to kick an enemy or a friend.
Watch it, buddy.
The only place it does falter is the scoring system, which is a bit too complicated and vague, unlike most action and stealth games where it's more robust and comprehensible. But Vanquish is a good example of broad level design where putting mechanics and play come first to keep the player motivated with a story, but also making sure that the game flows well from one level to another with a tempo so as to not bombard the player with too much excitement. It's a core tenet that elevates Vanquish to its cult status. You can even see this in most battles where NPCs draw enemies' attention away so you can have some breathing room to rethink your strategy. And they deal tiny amounts of damage so that the player still needs to accomplish a lot in the battles themselves. So in Act 2 Mission 4, you're on a monorail that moves slowly so Sam can take out the spotlights. This is an easy sniping section that feels more akin to a stealth game. Then you get off the monorail for a brief firefight to blast through the station, which is followed by an intense boss fight against a spaceship. That's how Vanquish flows from one state of an action to another, Pacing a whole game with other elements like new areas, mechanics like the zero gravity, or a flashy escaping set piece never lets the player get bored and keeps them hooked. And linear games are really good at this, like The Last of Us, which has a mix of stealth, exploration and intense firefights. That's why it was so hard to put down my controller when I first played it. Another reason why most cover-based shooters aren't as fun is because of its replay value. As much fun as the Uncharted games are with over-the-top action and cinematic set pieces, there's zero replayability as it gets boring mechanically once you put down the controller. Replay value shouldn't stem from the game forcing you to do so, like with New Game Plus and competitive multiplayer that often feels tacked on, but rather should be an intrinsic value tied to the fun elements of the game. That's why throwing an axe in God of War never gets boring, and slow-mo shooting in Vanquish is so satisfying. Platinum Games knows that the challenges for a willing player will make them come back for more rather than luring them with a multiplayer. That's why most of their titles are favourite for skilled players like speedrunners, and they also lack multiplayer elements. Resident Evil 4, also directed by Shinji Mikami, massively influenced the shooter genre with its over-the-shoulder perspective and precision shooting, which we've seen in many games that followed suit like Dead Space, Gears of War and what have you. But it was an established franchise at the time with mainstream following and fandom that had everyone lose their minds when it shifted genres from survival horror to an action-driven horror. Vanquish, on the other hand, came out during the time where the market was saturated with third-person shooters, which meant that it didn't garner much attention, but it did change the way some developers made their shooters, as seen in bonkers Terminator shoot-em-up like Binary Domain, and even first-person shooters like Apex Legends. It focuses its core gameplay loop around mobility and abilities, where the player character has a tactical, a passive and an ultimate, along with mobility that lets you slide and shoot, or even use your tactical at the same time. A character like Bangalore can use a tactical as an offensive push, or use it to quickly escape as a passive lets her run faster when shot. Octane runs 3 times faster but inflicts health damage that regenerates slowly. Combining each mechanics in a given situation effectively leads to an intense battle with satisfying skill ceiling from casual players to pros. This shows that any genre can have depth and mechanics to master rather than just action games with combos and scoreboards. Vanquish might not go down in history as highly influential, but its innovations and subversions definitely changed the third-person shooter genre in more ways than one, at least for me. Hey, thanks for watching the video, and that makes me think that I did a good job with my video's flow and pacing. I spent 30 hours playing a 7-hour game, what is wrong with me? But do let me know what's your favourite shooter in the comment section below, and like the video while you're down there, so YouTube thinks I'm good enough to recommend to other people. Also subscribe if you want to support my channel, and to get notified every time I put out a video. Cheers!